You don't lose because you're weak. You lose because you hand the wheel to your emotions. A cold glance ruins your whole day. One comment echoes in your mind until 3 a.m. A flicker of anxiety makes you hesitate, and the moment passes. That's not fate. It's a pattern, and patterns can be changed. Stoicism, once a compass for emperors, warriors, and ordinary people alike, offers you the greatest weapon of all: self-mastery. Not through suppression, but through awareness. Not by numbing, but by facing what you feel without being overwhelmed by it. If you've ever asked, why do I react like this? How can I stop being ruled by my emotions? This may be the doorway you've been searching for. Stoicism won't make you cold. It will make you strong, not unfeeling, but unshaken. This journey won't be easy, but once you begin, you'll feel it. You're becoming someone who doesn't crumble under pressure. Let's begin. 1. The foundation: self-respect. Every morning, a man might straighten his collar, check his reflection, adjust what the world can see. But if behind the eyes he holds contempt for himself, the world will reflect that back. Among all the techniques for managing emotion, meditation, journaling, breathwork, affirmations, one thing comes before all the rest: self-respect. Not performance-based confidence, not ego dressed up as certainty, but a quiet belief: I am enough, even without applause. Without this, we build ourselves on sand. One rejection, one insult, one failure, and we collapse. Not because others were cruel, but because we handed them the keys to our worth. We don't chase feelings. We chase what will numb them, because the weight inside is too much, and our self-worth is too fragile to hold it. Stoicism doesn't teach you to suppress emotion. It teaches you to own it, to take the reins, rather than be dragged by the wild horses of fear, anger, or sadness. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The best revenge is not to be like your enemy." It's not just a call for virtue, it's a warning. Lose yourself trying to please everyone, and you become a stranger to your own soul. The one with true self-respect doesn't shapeshift for approval, and doesn't sell out their values just to escape a passing loneliness. Ask yourself this: how do I treat myself when no one's around? Do I procrastinate, speak cruelly to myself, sabotage what matters? Or do I show up like a real friend, honest but never hateful? People with self-respect don't need likes or validation to feel alive. They don't explode at criticism because they know what's theirs to control and what's not. And here's the truth: you don't build self-respect with big ideas. You build it with small, consistent action. Keeping your word, even when no one would notice if you didn't. Waking up when you said you would. Eating to nourish, not punish. Saying no because your peace matters. Every time you follow through, you lay another brick in the foundation of your inner fortress. And as that foundation strengthens, something shifts. You stop needing rescue. You stop saving others just to feel useful. You stop hiding behind smiles. Self-respect becomes your filter. It protects what's worth keeping and lets the poison pass. But if self-respect is the foundation, there's a silent danger that slips in through the cracks. The habit of outsourcing your emotions to the world. And that's what we'll explore next. 2. Understanding emotional delegation. Have you ever woken up on a quiet morning? No plans, no urgency, only to reach for your phone and suddenly hours disappear in scrolling? Not because the content is fulfilling, but because stopping would mean facing your own thoughts. This is a subtle addiction no one talks about. The addiction to distraction. We fear silence, not because it's empty, but because it's honest. And so we outsource. We hand the reins of our emotional life to apps, to opinions, to noise. We let strangers determine how we feel. We measure our worth by external metrics. And we wonder why we feel lost. When you live like this, you no longer steer your own ship. You're tossed around by algorithms, headlines, and unspoken comparisons. You're not overwhelmed because the world is cruel. You're overwhelmed because you've never taken back the controls. But here's the good news. You can. And it begins by returning to yourself. Not all at once, but moment by moment. Each time you pause before reacting. Each time you choose presence over distraction. Each time you remind yourself, I am not my emotions. I am the one observing them. And in that space, you'll find the beginning of something powerful. Freedom. Sometimes the urge to stay busy isn't about ambition. It's about avoidance. Avoiding the loneliness, the fear, the emptiness hiding behind the words, I'm fine. The Stoics teach that if you don't master your emotions will master you, like a blindfolded rider yanked around by a wild horse. You're not always angry because of what just happened. Often it's a scar, still raw, from something long ago. You're not always sad because of today. Sometimes it's because deep down, you've been living like you're undeserving of love, and your emotions are simply echoes of that silent belief. So what do? We outsource our pain. When you're anxious, you head to the fridge. When you're rejected, you drown in work. When you feel hollow, you text someone from your past. Not because you truly want them back, but because silence feels unbearable. That's emotional outsourcing. Handing your inner world to things outside your control. To food, to people, to dopamine-driven apps, to performance. But here's the truth. If a child falls and is given candy every time to stop crying, they won't learn to get up. And adults aren't so different. Every time we soothe ourselves with shopping, binge-watching, overworking, we're not healing, we're postponing. And like all debts, the longer we put it off, the heavier it gets. Until one day, you don't even know what you actually feel, only that you need to feel something else. Stoicism doesn't ask you to suppress emotion, it teaches you to sit with it, so that you don't live in chaos for the rest of your life. Next time your chest tightens and your hand reaches for your phone, pause. Just sit for 3 minutes. Do nothing. Don't fix it. Don't run from it. Let the discomfort pass through you. You'll realize it won't destroy you. It might even make you stronger. Pick one behavior you turn to when you're low. Scrolling, snacking, texting someone for attention. Next time it hits, just pause for 3 minutes. No performance, no solution. Just awareness. Feel what's actually there. Sadness, hurt, fear, loneliness. That small act of staying present is a deeply Stoic one. It's not about control. It's about clarity. And here's what will surprise you. The more you can tolerate discomfort, the less you depend on the outside world to regulate your insides. A cold stare, a delayed reply. They no longer control your mood, because you've learned how to stay with yourself, how to face yourself, and how to honor your emotions without outsourcing them. And once you start doing that, you begin to notice patterns, the same emotional loops, the same triggers, and it stops being about what they did and starts being about what inside of you is still trying to heal. But instead of thinking, I'm too sensitive or I should be stronger by now, you'll realize maybe this is just your mind's way of protecting you from what once overwhelmed you. And from there, you go deeper. 3. Defense mechanisms and hidden wounds. 1. Winter afternoon, a man slipped and fell in front of a crowd. He didn't check his injury. He looked around to see who saw. The pain came later. What he feared more than falling was looking weak. That fear, it's human. And many who seem the strongest are simply those most skilled at hiding. They manage their emotions like a public image, not to feel, but to protect the mask. Psychologists call these defense mechanisms. Your mind builds barriers not to deceive others, but to shield yourself from pain. You lash out at minor critique, Not because you're angry, but because it hits something deeper. You shrug after rejection and say, "I wasn't that into it anyway." Not because you didn't care, but because it's easier than admitting you're hurt. These responses seem normal, but they build walls that imprison the real you. That's not strength. That's fear wearing armor. True Stoicism doesn't ask you to be numb. It asks you to feel without becoming the feeling. Marcus Aurelius never preached suppression. He wrote of understanding your emotions, naming them, guiding them, instead of letting them steer the ship. A buried feeling doesn't vanish. It waits, and it resurfaces in the dark. Epictetus said, "It is not events that disturb us, but our judgments about them." We don't suffer because we fall. We suffer because we believe the fall made us look pathetic. Take Ryan, 37, a single father. He was a rock for his son, reliable, stoic, steady. When he lost his job, he told no one. He kept up the performance, school drop-offs, daily routines, all while feeling like a ghost in his own life. Until one evening his son asked, "Dad, are you tired?" And Ryan broke. Not because of the question, but because someone finally saw him, not the mask. That night, he didn't vent. He didn't fall apart. He just allowed himself to be real. That's where healing begins. If you want to start, try this. Next time you shut down, lash out, or pull away, pause. Ask, what am I protecting? Maybe it's a tough image. Maybe it's an old story. I must never show weakness. No need to fix it yet, just notice it. Because awareness is already movement. The Bible says, "Man looks at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart." But you don't need divine sight to see your own heart. You just need the courage to stop hiding from it. So ask yourself, are you living from your real emotions or performing the role you think others admire? Because if you're always acting, who's actually living your life? Step out of the armor you thought made you strong. Real courage is allowing a crack to show and choosing not to hide it. True strength doesn't avoid pain, it transforms it. And if your pain feels deep and unexplainable, maybe it didn't begin today. Maybe it began when you were small, when your feelings weren't seen, when you cried and no one came, when anger got you shamed and sadness got you ignored. Emotions don't disappear. They wait, and that's why the next lesson is so important. Returning to the roots. Not to blame, but to finally stop blaming yourself. 4. Tracing emotions back to childhood. Some adults never raise their voices, but live in a quiet state of tension. They smile when they're exhausted, say, "It's fine" when they're angry, and keep everything running smoothly, except themselves. They never cry. They never say no. They're never truly angry at anyone, but they're never truly close to anyone either. Their emotions don't show. They sink inward. They settle, harden, and scab over. If this sounds like you probably don't need to be taught emotional control. You mastered it, too early and for too long. So long that now you struggle to even recognize what you're feeling. This often begins in childhood, not always in violent homes. Sometimes in homes that seem normal on the surface, but didn't feel emotionally safe. Maybe no one hit you or left you behind, but there wasn't space for your feelings to exist. Maybe your parents loved you, but were always too busy. Maybe a sibling was ill, or there was tension in the home, and somewhere along the way, you silently decided, "I won't add to the weight. I can't be a burden." So you didn't cry. You didn't ask for comfort. You didn't express need. You became the good kid, quiet, helpful, low maintenance. And every time someone praised you for being strong, the message was reinforced. To be loved, you must hide how you feel. But Stoicism doesn't teach suppression. It teaches awareness with courage. Emotions, like rivers, are powerful. When you learn how to swim, they carry you forward. But if you never learned, and instead stand paralyzed in the current, you eventually drown. Children who aren't taught emotional resilience build makeshift rafts. Beliefs like, I'm only safe if I stay quiet. I'm only loved if I'm useful. But the raft doesn't grow with you. Your fear does. So now, as an adult, you may find yourself people-pleasing, apologizing for resting, pushing your anger down until it explodes sideways. You think you're managing emotions, but really, they're managing you from underneath. You don't know why emptiness creeps in, why not being needed hurts so much, or why a small critique breaks you. These are not overreactions. They are echoes of a childhood that lacks space to feel safe. It starts small. Take Daniel, a man in his 30s. His girlfriend kept telling him he felt distant, hard to reach. But he didn't understand. He texted her, helped her, did all the right things. But when she was upset, he froze. When she asked if he was okay, he always said, I'm fine. That blankness hurt her, and he didn't know why, until one day he finally wrote down, I never learned how to feel sad with someone else, because no one ever sat with me in mine. If you want to begin healing, start simple. Pick one feeling you tend to avoid. Maybe sadness, disappointment, or loneliness. The next time it comes, don't run. Stay a little longer. Don't judge it. Don't spin it into something positive. Just notice it. Write it down. It might feel strange, like peeling off a mask you thought was part of your face. But here's the truth. Emotions only become dangerous when ignored. Face them, and they lose their power. Touch them, and they begin to soften. If you've made it this far, you're already doing something most people never learned. Listening inwardly, not to control yourself like a machine, but to live with clarity and self-trust. So here's a question for you. Did you grow up learning to never bother anyone? And today, are you ready to bother someone, just a little, to finally be real? If so, share your story in the comments. Your truth may help someone else find theirs, because the next step is crucial. We're going deeper. The rescuer-rescued relationship trap. Have you ever baked a cake for someone's birthday, only to realize no one remembers yours? Some people live their entire lives like that. Quiet, giving, thoughtful, always in the background. They show up for others. They pour themselves into relationships, but when it falls apart, they're the ones left shattered. They wonder, how could they leave after everything I gave? But sometimes, they weren't in love with the person. They were trying to heal themselves through them. This is the trap of the rescuer, because deep down, rescuers are the ones hoping to be saved. Stoicism reminds us, to be truly free, you must first know where you're still bound. Those who are raised to be good, obedient, helpful, high-achieving, often carry a quiet belief. I only deserve love if I earn it. So in relationships, they give. But not from abundance, from fear. The fear that if they're not needed, they'll be forgotten. And that kind of giving isn't generosity. It's a survival strategy. Think about it. Have you ever been drawn to someone who was struggling, chaotic, or emotionally unavailable? Someone you felt you could help or fix? You weren't being irrational. You were playing out an old script. If I save them, maybe I'll finally be saved. But that never works, because you can't build real connection on a foundation of emotional debt. So if this resonates with you, ask yourself, am I giving because I want to, or because I'm afraid not to? Do I feel loved, or just useful? There's a difference, and the next lesson will help you break that pattern at its root. Because healing doesn't come from being needed. It comes from being known. The rescuer-rescued trap. Have you ever been the one holding space, Listening every night, absorbing someone else's sadness, their storms, their chaos. And maybe at first it came from love. But over time, it wore you down. You endured. You held on. You gave. Until one day, you couldn't anymore. And when you finally let go, guilt crept in like a shadow. You thought, maybe I wasn't strong enough. Maybe I should have stayed. But the truth is, you were never meant to be someone else's emotional battery. Their pain is not your currency. Their peace is not your project. Emotions aren't debts you're required to pay. Wounds aren't yours to fix just because you care. Stoicism doesn't ask you to be cold. It asks you to stay free. Because attachment, when unbalanced, becomes captivity. When someone else's emotional state starts defining your worth, you're no longer guiding your life. You're being guided by guilt, obligation, and fear. So pause. Before rushing in to help, ask yourself, is this relationship truly mutual? Am I giving from love or from the fear that if I stop, I'll lose them? Don't force the answer. Just carry the question with you. The next time your hand reaches for the phone, to check in on someone who rarely checks on you, pause and hold that question gently in your awareness. If something inside feels off, maybe it's time to develop a skill most of us were never taught: boundaries. Not as a wall to keep others out, but as a way to honor the space you live in. It starts small. When you receive an urgent message, instead of rushing to solve, take a breath and ask, do I have the capacity right now? Am I helping because I want to, or because I'm afraid of seeming selfish? Even a moment of reflection can shift you from emotional reactivity to emotional mastery. And with practice, something powerful begins. You learn to receive, and you learn to say, that's enough, especially when what you truly need is to be loved in return. The power of receiving and setting boundaries. The ability to receive sounds simple. Who wouldn't want love, support, and respect? But look closer. Many people don't actually know how to receive. They feel guilty when offered help. They deflect compliments. They say yes when every part of them is whispering no. In Stoic thought, this confusion reflects a deeper misunderstanding of what is within our control and what is not. When you reject the act of receiving, you're not being humble. You're denying your rightful place. A person of value, worthy of rest, protection, and peace. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Receive without pride. Let go without attachment." This applies not only to material things, but also to emotional boundaries. To accept kindness without guilt. To say no without apology. To hold space for your own limits. This is the spirit of a Stoic, unshaken by approval or criticism and unburdened by emotional debt. So ask yourself, how often do I say yes while my soul screams no? How often do I rearrange my life to avoid disappointing others? How many times have I performed to please instead of living to be whole? Stoicism doesn't promote selfishness. It teaches self-governance. And self-governance cannot exist without boundaries. Kindness, when unchecked, becomes a trap, an open door for anyone, including those who exploit it. So practice this one skill. Say no, clearly, calmly, without justification. No extra explanation. No softening it to ease someone else's discomfort. Just one honest sentence. I can't. And silence. You'll be surprised. The world won't fall apart. People will adjust. And more importantly, so will you. To live this way, you have to sharpen your inner ear, not to the noise of people-pleasing, but to the quiet voice of self-honesty. Do I really want this? Is this coming from truth or fear? That's how internal boundaries form. Just like you can't build a solid home without knowing where your land ends, you can't build a solid identity without knowing where your responsibility stops. This is not harsh. It's how you build a lighter life. Instead of saving everyone, you become your own guardian. You weren't born to be agreeable. You were born to grow. And every time you set a boundary, you take another step out of emotional dependency. So ask yourself gently, is there a relationship where you feel suffocated? A task you keep saying yes to, only to end up drained and resentful? You don't have to solve it today. You just need to stop pretending it's not there. Because once you begin to live as someone who can both receive and refuse, your emotions stop pulling your strings. You're no longer a puppet of guilt or approval. You've taken the reins. And that prepares you for the final, most profound Stoic lesson. 7. Becoming aware of your own emotions. You don't always realize your emotions are in control until it's too late. You snap with a sharp comment. You throw a cold glance at someone you love. You make a split-second decision that echoes for days. And then you ask yourself, why did I do that? Emotions aren't something you can outrun. They don't knock politely before entering. They live inside you, quietly shaping your thoughts, decisions, and reactions. And here's the paradox. The less attention you give them, the more power they have. The Stoics understood this deeply. If you want to master your life, they said, start by noticing what's moving you from within. Some people say, I don't even know what I'm feeling. And that's more common than you think. Ask an adult, how are you really feeling? Watch them hesitate, like a child called to the front of the class without the answer. It's not because they're clueless. It's because most of us were never taught how to sit with our feelings, how to name them, how to hold them without fear. You might be able to name 20 car brands, but not a single shade of sadness. What you call annoyed might actually be hurt. Stressed might be loneliness. Irritated might really mean, I feel invisible. When you mislabel what you feel, you misfire in how you act. You snap at your coworker. You get short with your child. You push people away, not because of what they've done, but because something inside you was never seen, never named. Stoicism doesn't tell you to suppress emotion. It teaches you to observe, without judgment, like a gatekeeper watching the crowd pass through the city gates. An emotion appears. You notice. It lingers. You acknowledge. It leaves. You let it go. But that kind of clarity begins with a simple practice. Name what you feel. Imagine this. You wake up late. There's traffic. Your coworker ignores you. Your boss dumps a deadline on your desk. By the time you're home, you're silent, closed off, scrolling into the night. And when someone asks, "Are you okay?" you say, "I'm fine." But that's not emotional maturity. That's emotional avoidance. That's how emotion handles you, not how you handle it. So start here. One quiet question. What am I really feeling right now? Ask it before the reaction, before the defensiveness, before the sarcasm or the silence. Maybe you're not angry, just disrespected, not sad, just unseen, not tired, just emotionally empty. Once you see it clearly, you're no longer being dragged by it. Here's a practical habit. Use precise language. Don't just say, "I'm tired." Try, "I feel emotionally drained because I don't feel appreciated." Don't just say, "I'm mad." Try, "I feel abandoned." It might feel strange at first, but the words you use shape the awareness you gain. Because if you can't name the truth, you'll keep reacting to everything but it. So next time you feel triggered, pause. 10 seconds. Place your hand on your chest. Ask, what am I really feeling right now? You don't need to fix it, just see it. Stoicism teaches that emotions are not the enemy. They are data, signals, warnings, like a light on your dashboard. When your oil light comes on, you don't smash the panel. You check the engine. Emotions are the same. Ask yourself, Do I want my emotions in the driver's seat, while I sit helpless in the back, wondering why I keep crashing into the same walls? Or will I step forward, learn to read my dashboard, and finally steer with awareness? Recognizing your emotions is not a weakness. It's the foundation of real strength. When you understand what's happening inside, you stop demanding that others figure it out for you. You stop acting from defense. You start responding from clarity. And slowly, your life becomes anchored, not in chaos, but in calm, grounded control. But knowing isn't enough. Just like swimming, you can't master it from a book. You have to step into the water. You have to feel the current. You have to practice until awareness becomes your second nature, until presence becomes your default. That's when Stoicism becomes more than philosophy. It becomes a way of living, a life guided from the inside, a self that no longer needs rescuing, because it's finally being led by you. 8. Practice until it becomes second nature. Emotions don't ask for your permission. They don't wait for a convenient time to show up. They arrive like uninvited guests, loud, messy, and disruptive. And if you don't learn to manage them, they'll act like they own the place. But here's the truth that most people overlook. It's not the intensity of emotion that shapes your life. It's your response, especially the ones you practice over and over. Because with enough repetition, those responses become second nature. And when that happens, discipline no longer feels like effort. It becomes identity. This is what the Stoics taught. Emotions aren't your enemies. They're messengers. The real question is, have you trained yourself to hear them clearly and respond wisely? Self-mastery doesn't appear in a moment of crisis. It's built slowly, quietly, in the ordinary decisions you make every single day. When the bank line is long, when your child interrupts for the third time, when your plans fall apart. These aren't just inconveniences, they're training grounds, moments where you're either reacting on autopilot or building the foundation of a calmer life. There is no neutral choice. Every response is practice. And with enough practice, the right action becomes effortless. Take John, a software engineer in Chicago. He was known for being efficient, sharp, on top of things. But underneath the surface, he was easily irritated by delays, by noise, by anything he couldn't control. A long red light, a slow text reply, his computer lagging by 2 seconds. Each moment triggered him, and he'd curse under his breath, thinking it was harmless. Until one day, his 7-year-old son was playing with toy blocks and casually repeated one of John's outbursts, not in anger, just as part of normal conversation. That was the moment, the mirror. John realized his emotions were teaching someone else, and not in the way he intended. He didn't go on a retreat. He didn't start journaling or meditating for hours. He just began with a simple shift. Every time he felt that familiar emotional wave rising, he said out loud, quietly, "I see you." Not to anyone else, to the feeling itself. He treated it like a stranger at the door. He didn't swing it open. He didn't slam it shut. He just noticed, and something changed. That awareness created space, a small gap between emotion and action. Over time, that gap grew wider. And in that space, he found his power. His son noticed too, not in the words, but in the calm presence John slowly became. That's what Stoicism offers. Not perfection, but practice. A life where emotional storms still come, but you no longer get swept away. So ask yourself, what small response can I begin practicing today? Not once, not when it's easy, but again and again, until it becomes who I am. Because true strength is built in silence, in repetition, in the choices no one else sees. And eventually, you won't have to think about controlling your emotions, because your calm will walk in first. That kind of practice might seem small, but don't underestimate its power. Because the moment you name an emotion, you create space between you and it, and in that space, you gain your greatest strength, the power to choose. Have you ever tried staying silent for just 5 seconds before responding to something that gets under your skin? Just 5 seconds. It sounds simple, but in those few moments, you interrupt the reflex. You ask yourself, is this really worth my peace? The first time feels strange. The 5th time, less so. By the 30th, you won't even have to think. You'll respond with calm because it's now who you are. Not because the emotions disappeared, but because they're no longer in charge. That's the difference between living on autopilot and living with intention. The Stoics said it clearly. You can't control what happens, but you can always control how you respond. And that control isn't forged in chaos. It's shaped in calm, in repetition, in small, quiet acts that no one else sees. Like driving a car, you don't recall every rule aloud. You just know because you've practiced. That's how emotional mastery works too. Your body starts to recognize what matters and what doesn't deserve your energy. So ask yourself, every reaction is a brick. What are you building? A shelter or a prison? Life won't hand you a manual for inner peace, but you can write your own, one decision at a time. You don't need to overhaul your whole world. Just pause long enough to change your next reaction, because that's where transformation begins, brick by brick. We've just explored 8 ways to stop being ruled by emotion and begin mastering the self. We talked about building a solid base of self-esteem, recognizing how we unknowingly outsource our emotional life, peeling back the defenses we built to protect old wounds, many of them formed in childhood. We looked at the trap of constantly saving others to feel needed and the guilt that follows. We learned how to set quiet boundaries, to listen to what we feel instead of escaping it. And finally, we discovered the power of consistent practice, the kind that reshapes your reactions until calm becomes second nature. If there's one idea to carry with you, let it be this. Emotions aren't problems, they're signals, and every signal is a chance to train yourself. The person who can face their emotions without running, who can stay steady without suppressing, that person is truly free. So if this message made you pause, if you're on the path to reclaiming your calm and clarity, give this video a like. It tells the algorithm this kind of content matters. And if you'd like to keep exploring Stoic wisdom, modern tools for inner peace, and the quiet strength of emotional mastery, subscribe to the channel. Turn on notifications, because we'll meet again, especially in the moments when you need to stay grounded in a world that won't stop moving.